What's up, everybody? Yeah, cool new intro. I feel intros are like the thing now. But I love sharing that intro. It captures a lot of the pictures that have been sent to me over the last couple of days, weeks. So if you want your picture added to the intro, just share your picture with me. Share reading the book or just any of your thoughts, or just send me a selfie. We'll throw it in the collection there. It is Monday, August, what is it? August 10th, I think. A little bit after noon here in the Eastern time zone. Just wanted to share some more of my thoughts. So this morning, I do marathons, the shirt that's on right now. I finished my great race across Michigan. Finished up the 386-mile run from the Ohio border up through the Lower Peninsula, across the Mackinac Bridge, through the UP. Finally finished that sucker. More than 57 hours later. Did not do it all in one stretch, but I did knock it out, got it done, check that box up and check that thing off of the bucket list and moving on. But like I tell people all the time when I run, it's therapy for me. I get to just distract myself, listen to podcasts, and kind of go down these rabbit holes as I just run. And as of late, I've been listening to a lot of financial podcasts, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people talking about smart investing, a lot of people just talking about how to save for the long haul. And that's kind of where my headspace has been lately. And I've been sharing a lot of my own analogies as I've been taking the stuff I've been learning in the financial space and talking about how they equate and how they play out in my own personal world and professional world of an educator. And want to take just a couple of minutes today and talk about yet another connection. So on the podcast I was listening to today, they started off by talking about a pretty scary statistic. They mentioned that in America today, 55% of marriages end in divorce, and that 70% of those divorces are a result of financial strain, financial hardships. People not seeing things necessarily the same way in terms of how to budget and allocate their income. When their income doesn't align and their expenses don't align, there become these fractures. And in this podcast I was listening to, they went on to explain that it's not necessarily an income issue. It's not necessarily a budget issue. But when people disagree on their budgets and their finances, it's really just a way to open the door to some deeper divisions. Because your budget really determines your priorities. It determines where your values are. When you are saying this is how I'm going to be spending my money, allocating my resources, it's your way of saying, here's what I think is more important than something else. If you're choosing to go out to eat and get ice cream every single night and spending your money on that, as opposed to paying bills or paying down your mortgage or your debt, that's a financial decision you're making, and that's your value system. And I'm not here to discuss where you need to be spending your money. That's not it at all. But I am going to make the analogy, and I'm going to make that comparison to something I talk about all the time in schools and in classrooms, the idea of standards. I'm a firm believer that what you assess is what you value, and what you value is what you teach. And in our classrooms, the standards drive where we go in our schools and in our classrooms. I'm here to say that, I guess a bad analogy, a bad metaphor, if you will, is that your economic structure of your classroom is the way that you allocate your time and your resources in meeting the standards. We are all in charge of our own academic budget, if you will. We all have the same income, but we don't necessarily all expense it the same way. We don't necessarily allocate our time and our energies in the same manner as the person across the hall. And, a guy that gets to speak with a lot of schools, a lot of educators, and a lot of districts, I know that when I start talking about grading and assessment and data and all that kind of stuff with teachers, a lot of times it's like this taboo topic that I bring up in a staff lounge or a staff meeting, and it makes people cringe because we seriously get into these conversations about our values, what we think is more important than somebody else. As a former middle school teacher, I taught social studies for a few years, and I know that I would spend a lot of time in 8th grade social studies talking about the Constitution and the amendments and the Bill of Rights, whereas my counterpart would spend a lot of time talking about the Civil War and Reformation. We were both teaching the same content, but where we spent our energy and our time was different, and our kids got different experiences as a result. And we were both right in our own eyes, but it was hard for us to reach agreement and consensus on a budget in terms of how we needed to spend our time and allocate it so that all kids had an equitable experience. I'm going to challenge you that in this next year of uncertainty, this next year where you're still not quite sure what it's going to look like in October, November, December, to create your budget now before everything changes. It is possible to create a budget right now set on the income that you know. And we know that the standards aren't going to change. The standard is only standard if it's standard. The standards are going to stay the same whether or not you are in a virtual space or whether or not you are in a face-to-face environment. It is up to you to determine how you're going to allocate your time. It's up to you to determine where you're going to be spending your priorities. Determine that now, because you're always going to have things that happen to you. Just like with my own budget, I know that the car might break down. I know the roof might leak. So I'm going to set some time. I'm going to set some money aside to take care of those things so I can focus on the essentials, paying my mortgage and paying off my debt. In your world, you probably aren't going to have your kids with you 180 days this year. You're not. You're not going to have as much time and space with your kids. So focus on those priorities. What are those 10 to 15 things that you need to make sure that your students know beyond a shadow of a doubt? And focus your energies on those things. I would also challenge you that this school year, just like with my own budget, I set money aside so that I can play. I have some cheat money, if you will, so that I can go spend on ice cream or go to the movies if the movie theaters were open, or I can go do some fun things, a vacation fund. I set money aside for that so that I don't have to feel guilty and feel like I'm pulling money away from something else. Set some time aside, maybe 1-2 days a month, where you say, I'm going to play a little bit, 1 or 2 days a month. I'm going to experiment. I'm going to innovate. And think about this. Over the next 10 months, if you just set 1 day aside each month to say, I'm going to try something I've never tried before. I'm going to experiment. I'm going to innovate. I'm going to create. I'm going to do something brand new in my classroom. At the end of this year, you're going to have 10 new, amazing, epic lessons. In 2 years, you'll have 20. In 3 years, you'll have 30. But this isn't just 10 new lessons growing each year. I guarantee you, just like with economics, this will be like an exponential rate of return, because each new idea that you have is going to grow into another new idea and another new idea. So that 10 that you develop this year is automatically going to be 15 or 20 or 25 next year. And then 25 could turn into 35 or 45 the following year. Within a few short years, your entire toolbox is going to be filled with new ideas. So focus on the focus, set aside time to play and to learn and to grow, and then double down on the things that matter most. So that's my 2 cents today. I hope you have an amazing day. Take this, use this, scrap this, just my thoughts and thought I'd share.